Okay. Hello, my name is Celine Cross, and I want to share something that I found quite a while ago, 2004, I believe. And it is Illinois Public Act 093-0829, an act concerning public health. This was sponsored by Barack Obama. The chief sponsor was Barack Obama in 2004. And the way that I know this, the way that I became aware of this, was that since I'm in Illinois, I saw him speak when he was running for U.S. Senate from Illinois, being an Illinois senator, which he was an Illinois senator one term and a U.S. senator one term. He was installed by the CIA. And I didn't know this at the time. I knew nothing about him, and I heard him speak, and he said three things that weren't accurate or true, and I was going to correct him because I did not know who he was, and was a lifelong Democrat. I'm not anymore. And then he made the comment that he supported 100% of Homeland Security because it hadn't yet been created. It had not been passed yet. And I stood up and walked out. So I went home and I was like, who is this guy? And I looked up Illinois state statutes, legislature action, and I found that he was the chief sponsor of this bill, which was a bill at the time and hadn't passed into law yet. And I remember watching it go through. It was like May 15th or something, and it was in committee, and it passed through the committee, and in the next 24 hours after what they had looked at, the police language was taken out, but it was added back in like 24 hours before the legislature voted on it, which I thought was creepy, and I cannot. Anyway, it passed, and it's now in the books. It's been modified several times. Anyway, I wanted to share some of it. I have my friend here with me, and we're going to try to kind of decipher what it's saying, but I think it's really critical for people to understand what it's in. It actually needs to be repealed, and it actually needs to be repealed. This was authored by the Johns Hopkins University, and it was came out after 9/11. So that's how long this has been around. And then I believe, my guess would be that it was passed, a version of it was passed in the 41 states that locked down first, and the other 9 states maybe said, no, we don't need your Model State Emergency Health Powers Act. Thank you very much, Johns Hopkins University. I think this is important Johns Hopkins University seems to be complicit in this whole thing because they're presenting the numbers. When you watch TV, look at who's giving you the numbers, and Johns Hopkins University has been conducting like things for youth with the United Nations, how to dress properly, and put in your business attire and what khaki pants to wear and whatever. With the United Nations, Johns Hopkins University, they've been for last 22 years, and they also have established the guidelines. The Do Not Resuscitate guidelines have come from Johns Hopkins University, and so a lot of Johns Hopkins University was founded by a Satanic Skull and Bones member. I can't remember his name. I haven't looked it up recently, but I knew that a long time ago, and they authored a version of this public act. So I'm going to read part of it to you. This is the emergency powers upon proclamation of a disaster by the governor, which we have had now on March 23rd, 2020 in Illinois, as provided for in the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Act, IEMA. The Director of Professional Regulation, DPR, shall have the following powers, which shall be exercised only in coordination with the Illinois Emergency Management Agency and the Department of Public Health. 1. The power to suspend the requirements for permanent or temporary licensure of persons who are licensed in another state and are working under the direction of the Illinois Emergency Management Agency and the Department of Public Health pursuant to a declared disaster. So that to me sounds to me like that Illinois is pulling in people from outside of the state, and the requirements for licensure are being suspended. Is that what it sounds like to you?
Yes, I think so.
2. The power to modify the scope of practice restrictions under any licensing act administered by department for any person working under the direction of the IEMA and the IDPH pursuant to the declared disaster. And that one sounds to me like the power to modify the scope of practice restrictions. That the scope that they can expand these restrictions. The restrictions, practice restrictions are no longer applicable. They can be modified by the IDPH. What that sounds like to me. Does that sound about right? I don't know.
Okay, we're getting there.
3. The power to expand the exemption in Section 4A of the Pharmacy Practice Act of 1987 to those licensed professionals whose scope of practice has been modified under paragraph 2 of Section A, which I just read, of this section, to include any element of this practice of pharmacy as defined in the Pharmacy Practice Act of 1987 for any person working under the direction of IEMA and IDPH, which pursuant to the declared disaster, which sounds to me like those being exempt to practice the pharmacy is expanded to include more people that aren't licensed or licensed in this state to maybe give out vaccines.
Of course, their goal is to vaccinate the whole world, so they need more people.
Is that what it sounds like to you? That now they're exempt. They don't have to be licensed to give you vaccine. That's what it sounds like to me. B. Persons exempt from licensure under paragraph 1 of subsection A of this section, and persons operating under modified scope of practice provisions under paragraph 2 of subsection A of this section shall be exempt from licensure or be subject to modified scope of practice only until the declared disaster has ended as provided by law. So again, there it sounds like they're exempted from, basically, there's unlicensed people giving you medicine, vaccines, medical procedures like using ventilators. That's what it sounds to me like they're doing.
Well, Trump has said he's going to use the full power of the military to help with the vaccines. Whatever that
Well, that's
mean.
true. Yes, that's true. That is true. So that could mean, yeah, that's what that could mean. It could mean that they are using military to give vaccines or whatever. C. The director shall exercise these powers by way of proclamation. So all she has to do is say, order, or all she has to do is proclaim that she's doing this, and then it's a done deal, I guess. Powers. The State Department of Public Health has general supervision of the interests of the health and lives of the people of the state. It has supreme authority in matters of quarantine and isolation, and may declare and enforce quarantine and isolation when none exists, and may modify or relax quarantine and isolation when it has been established. The department may adopt, promulgate, repeal, and amend rules and regulations, and make such sanitary investigations and inspections as it may, from time to time, deem necessary for the preservation and improvement of the public health consistent with law regulating the following. One is the transportation of the remains of deceased persons. That's weird. But basically, the Department of Public Health, the director can, it's giving her dictatorial power to put us on house arrest and detain us. It's not constitutional, but this is what this act is. This act is overriding the Constitution of the United States. Except that Section 535 of the Illinois Administrative Procedure Act relating to the procedures of rulemaking does not apply to the adoption of any rule required by federal law in connection with which the department is precluded by law from exercising any discretion. All local boards of health authorities and officers, police officers, sheriffs, and all other officers and employees of the state or any locality shall enforce the rules and regulations so adopted and orders issued by the department pursuant to this section. The Department of Public Health should conduct a public information campaign. So the Department of Public Health is conducting propaganda. The information by the Department of Public Health shall include a statement that mammography is the most accurate method of making an early detection of breast cancer. However, no diagnostic tool is 100% effective. Strange. And also, whatever. The Department of Public Health shall investigate the causes of dangerously contagious and infectious diseases, especially when existing in epidemic form, and which we do not have, and take means to restrict and suppress the same, and whenever such disease becomes or threatens to become an epidemic in any locality and the local board of health or local authorities neglect or refuse to enforce efficient measures for its restriction or suppression, or to act with sufficient promptness or efficiency, or whenever the local board of health or local authorities neglect or refuse to promptly enforce efficient measures for the restriction or suppression of dangerously contagious or infectious diseases, the Department of Public Health may enforce such measures as it deems necessary to protect the public health, and all necessary expenses so incurred shall be paid by the locality for which services are rendered. Which sounds to me like if the local Department of Public Health isn't abiding by these
draconian measures
by the Department of Public Health, they'll come in and do it for them, and then they'll send the bill to that county. So that will be on the burden of the local public health department. Our public health department is in full compliance. The McDonough County Health Department, thank you. They're doing their contact tracing since March. Thank you very much. Be subject to the provision, although I just read...
Let me add one thing about the Macomb. When I saw the hospital in Macomb, it looked like it was a stage set. There was these huge flags draped all over, and
yes, I haven't seen that
like
anywhere.
A Hollywood movie set.
It does look like a Hollywood movie set in this town. Like, I have other videos with some of those, but one of the signs that says something like, it has
yesterday was the easy day.
Something like we will win, or something.
Yesterday was the easy day is what was most
popular. Remember yesterday was better than tomorrow.
Something
I think like that. Yesterday was better than tomorrow. It's very creepy and ugh. Be subject to the provision of subsection C. The department may order a person or group of persons to be quarantined in isolation, or may order a place to be closed and made off limits to the public to prevent the probable spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease. Until the danger to the public health is eliminated or reduced in such a manner that no substantial danger to the public health any longer exists. Section 7 of the Illinois Sexually Transmissible Disease Control Act orders, I don't know what that is. Anyway, so they can order businesses to become to close. So they can order. Of course, these are businesses don't have to abide by these because they are orders and they have not been passed. This act is unconstitutional. It doesn't matter if the legislature passed it or not. It's unconstitutional. You can't just order businesses to close. That's not how this country works. C, except as provided in this section, no person or group of persons may be ordered to be quarantined or isolated, and no place may be ordered to be closed and made off limits to the public except when the consent of the person or owner of the place, or upon the prior order of a court of competent jurisdiction. Did you know that?
No, I haven't heard that one.
Okay.
That's pretty interesting. They need a court order to close, and these people are voluntarily closing their business.
It's because they haven't read this. So everyone in Illinois that's a business owner, this is important for you to know this. They're supposed to have the consent, or a court order. The department may, however, order a person or a group of persons to be quarantined or isolated, or may order a place to be closed and made off limits to the public on an immediate basis without prior consent or court order if, in the reasonable judgment of the department, which obviously not reasonable, immediate action is required to protect the public from a dangerously contagious or infectious disease. In the event of an immediate order issued without prior consent or court order, the department shall, as soon as practical, within 48 hours after issuing the order, obtain the consent of the person or owner, or file a petition requesting a court order authorizing the isolation of quarantine or closure. So then it backtracks and says, oh, we can close your business and we can give you the order after 48 hours after. However,
have they received any orders? All these businesses?
No, they haven't. I own a business. I own a business. I can tell you they have not received any orders.
Their own laws here. Not their laws.
They don't have to, because everybody's just closing their business. You don't have to close your business. You never had to close your business. And, okay. To obtain a court order, the department may, by clear, this is what I found. This was another thing I thought was very important. To obtain a court order, the Department of Public Health, by clear and convincing evidence, must prove that the public's health and welfare are significantly endangered by a person or group of persons that is suspected of having, that has been exposed to, or that is reasonably believed to have been exposed to, a dangerously contagious or infectious disease. By clear and convincing evidence. That means you would have to provide, the Department of Public Health has to provide to a court clear and convincing evidence that there's an epidemic, that there's a pandemic. There is no clear and convincing evidence.
And it sounds like it says if it's related to that business specifically, that business is causing somewhat of a danger of an epidemic, or so they have to do it on an individual basis, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yes. By a place where there is significant amount of activity likely to spread a dangerously contagious or infectious disease. Okay, so if you don't know about chromosome 8 yet, which was just released by Yummy Mummy, her website I think is Yummy Mummy Emporium, and I don't remember her name. Yum Naturals Emporium. Yeah. Look her up, subscribe to her, and she explains, she's a biogeneticist, isn't that right? Biogeneticist. And she has found that she can explain to you in detail that what the PCR test is not a test. The PCR test is not a test. The PCR test is just a tool that can be used if you're taking a sample from saliva or from whatever. This is my understanding, but I'm pretty sure she's also validating what my understanding was, that you're taking a sample of somebody's saliva, somebody's blood, somebody's whatever. In this case, I think probably, well, I don't know what they're saliva. I think they're taking, and they're duplicating it, so they're repeating it over and over and over again until they get a large enough sample to find what that is they're looking for. Chromosome 8 is something we all have. So basically, we are the virus. So if they repeat this...
The chromosome 8 is in our DNA, and it matches specifically the PCR for the virus, or what they call...
Oh, the World Health Organization is identifying chromosome 8 as COVID, as this virus. The World Health Organization is identifying this virus as chromosome 8, a Homo sapien chromosome 8, which we all have. So that's the same exact thing as, according to the United Nations World Health Organization, as this current...
Look around you. We're not safe. Everybody is wearing 90% are wearing masks. We're proclaiming that this nonsense is correct. Anybody wears a mask is proclaiming the correctness of a lie, basically.
We were just at the store and everyone is wearing a mask. I don't know what's on TV. Everyone's wearing a mask outside. Everyone's wearing a mask inside. I just went to Iowa. No one's wearing a mask because their governor is sane and they're not Jewish. Anyway, okay. In guidelines issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention of the World Health Organization, persons who are about to be ordered to be isolated or quarantined, and owners of places that are about to be closed and made off limits to the public shall have the right to counsel. Okay, so if you're going to be shut down by guidelines. Okay, so Pritzker's order, Pritzker's order is from Trump's order. He's made the order because of Trump. Okay, because Trump made the order first. So this is a one-party system with two factions, the Democrats and the Republicans. But it's a one-party system. It's a United Nations system. So Pritzker made the order based on Trump's order, and Trump's order made his and the guidelines by the Centers for Disease Control, which is a private company that made, I think, $4.7 billion from vaccinations last year. Is that what you understand?
Let's backtrack a little to this proclamation. When Trump gave the power to the governors to decide when their states would reopen in these different... It seems to me that He had to know that the Democratic governors were going to, quote, use this against him. But it seems like they're playing a game with this. Because he had to know the Democratic governors weren't going to just open up. They were going to try to destroy the economy, win the election, so on and so forth. But it's kind of an interplay of the both for a game that they...
He set the ball rolling, and they just went with it. And now all the Democrats are just doing what the Republicans don't, which is wear masks. But I can tell you, my town is 81%. When I was an election judge, and where I was an election judge, 81% of the people who, by the way, were state employees. A lot of them are state employees and get paid by the state. So they're working for the government because they work for Western Illinois University as professors and get paid by tax dollars. So they're basically socialists. And they voted 81% Republican. I can tell you that I'm pretty much the only one without a mask almost every time I go out. Almost every time. Like, unbelievable. And then there's Trump signs all over. I've seen one Biden sign. There's Trump signs everywhere. I'm in rural America. So Trump. Trump is the one that made these orders to begin with. Okay. Anyway. And then their guidelines, based on guidelines by the CDC, which is a private corporation that profits off of vaccinations, and the World Health Organization, which I think there's a documentary called Who Trust Who, I think, and it was made 2 years ago, 2018, and then you can see that it's a pay to play. It's like the American Medical Association. It's a pay to play. So the people who are involved in the World Health Organization are pharmaceutical representatives. It's for their profit. So anyway, we're getting off subject. Persons who are did I already say that? Yes, I did. The written notice shall additionally include the following. 1. Notice of the right to counsel. 2. Notice that if the person or owner is indigent, the court will appoint counsel for that person or owner. 3. Notice of the reason for the order for isolation, quarantine, or closure. 4. Notice of whether the order is an immediate order, and if so, the time frame for the department to seek consent or to file a petition requesting a court order as set out in this subsection. And 5. Notice of the anticipated duration of the isolation, quarantine, or closure. So this document's even saying that if you're a business owner, you have to get an order in order to close. You don't just close your business. This is in the act. As bad as this act, it's in the act that you have right to counsel and you have to get a written order from the Department of Public Health. But I do not know.
We're making this too easy for them.
This is communist dictation by Trump and the governors that are continuing this order. It's communism. If you don't know what communism is, you need to look it up. Bolshevism. Look it up. Do some research on this. Okay. D. The department may order physical examinations and tests and collect laboratory specimens as necessary for the diagnosis or treatment of individuals in order to prevent the probable spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease, which they have not proven. All they're doing is giving these fake numbers. They haven't proven jack nothing. Physical examinations, tests, or collection of laboratory specimens must not be such as are reasonably likely to lead to serious harm to the affected individual, which I think they've learned that some of these tests have been tainted. We don't even know what's in the test. I don't trust the test. I'm not getting tested. To prevent the spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease, the department may, pursuant to the provision or subsection C of this section, isolate or quarantine any person whose refusal or physical examination or testing or collection of laboratory specimens results in uncertainty regarding whether he or she has been exposed to or is infected with a dangerously contagious or infectious disease or otherwise poses a danger to the public's health, which none of this has been proven. An individual may refuse to consent to a physical examination, test, or collection of laboratory specimens. An individual may be given a written notice that shall include notice of the following. 1. That the individual may refuse to consent to physical examination, test, or collection of laboratory specimens. 2. That if the individual consents to physical examination, test, or collection of laboratory specimens, the results of that examination, test, or collection of laboratory specimens may be subject to the individual or to isolation or quarantine pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of this section. By the way, isolation and quarantine are no more than basically the Illinois Department of Public Health has now the warden of the state. Right? And now we are all inmates. So Now we are, as the UN puts it, UN poll, POC. I don't know if that means prisoners of, you know what? Patients of, you know what? I don't know. But when you read isolation or quarantine, these are just nice names for home or house arrest or detainment. We're okay. 3, that if the individual refuses to consent to physical examination, tests, or collection of laboratory specimens, and that refusal results in uncertainty regarding whether he or she has been exposed to or is infected with a dangerously contagious or infectious disease or otherwise poses a danger to the public's health, the individual may be subject to isolation or quarantine pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of the section. And 4, that if the individual refuses to consent to physical examination, tests, or collection of laboratory specimens and becomes subject to isolation and quarantine as provided in the subsection C, he or she shall have the right to counsel pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of the section, to the extent feasible without endangering the public's health. The department shall respect and accommodate the religious beliefs of individuals in implementing this subsection. I'm not sure what that the religious beliefs of an individual, but I guess you could have a religious belief that you don't get physical exams, tests, or give
correct
specimens, right?
Right?
So that would be my religion.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's in here.
Religion of nature.
Someone put this in here. Someone put this in there. Somebody's put this in here. Someone's added this language. You know, clear and convincing evidence and religious beliefs of individuals. To protect us, but this whole act needs to be repealed. So really, you need to contact your legislatures in Illinois and find out what the act is in all of the states. This was passed in 2004, by the way. And ask your legislature, your members of legislature, to repeal this act because they go into session in November of 2020 in Illinois. The department may tell them that's what you want. They work for you. They work for you. There seems to be a misunderstanding here with who is running the show, you know? Yes, we are being dictated to, and that's not how this works. That's how communism works. The people in China were not wearing masks before this happened because of any disease. They were wearing masks because it's so polluted in China that they're protecting themselves. They're protecting themselves from breathing in contaminants. So that is this, and that's a whole nother topic.
That's what our body is trying to do with these quote viruses. Our internal viruses, which we have a whole bunch of them, are trying to clean out the poisons that our body assimilates from all of the stuff in the air, food, whatever.
Right. The department may order the administration of vaccines, medications, or other treatments to persons as necessary in order to prevent the probable spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease, which has not been proven. By the way, a vaccine, medication, or other treatment to be administered must not be such as is reasonably likely to lead to serious harm to the affected individual. Okay, I'm going to read that again. It should not lead to serious harm to the affected individual. These vaccines should not lead to harm to the affected individual. These vaccines have not been tested. And the tests that I've seen, they are harmful. They are harmful. They don't know what these tests are going to do.
If you didn't trust the other vaccines before these, how could you possibly trust these as fast as they've been rolled out? Trump called them warp speed. This is Operation Warp Speed for vaccines. Oh, good luck with trying to give any of us that got any sense any.
To prevent the spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease, the department may, pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of this section, isolate or quarantine persons, arrest or detain, who are unable to or unwilling to receive vaccines, medications, or other treatments pursuant to this section. An individual may refuse to receive vaccines, medications, or other treatments. An individual shall be given a written notice that shall include notice of the following. Are you listening to this, National Guard? Because you need to. 1, that the individual may refuse to consent to vaccines, medications, or other treatments. 2, that if the individual refuses to receive vaccines, medications, or other treatments, the individual may be subject to isolation or quarantine pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of this section, and 3, that if the individual refuses to receive vaccines, medications, or other treatments and becomes subject to isolation or quarantine as provided in this subsection E, he or she shall have the right to counsel pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of this section to the extent feasible without endangering the public's health. The department shall respect and accommodate the religious beliefs of individuals in implementing this subsection. So I'm guessing that you can tell the whoever, the military or whatever, that's trying to give you these vaccines, medications, what's the other thing? Vaccines, medications, or other treatments, that it's against your religion.
Now
they're coming up with all the kinds of things.
Plasma treatment. They're taking blood from people who've quote recovered.
Yeah,
from
I'm not
COVID
doing that.
To give it to people that's.
I can't remember what they're calling convalescent plasma. I think is what he's calling it. I just saw that.
It's got to be dangerous if it's rolled out in this.
F. The department may order observation and monitoring of persons to prevent the probable spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease. Okay, so now they're going to watch you to make sure that you don't leave your house and your house arrest. To prevent the spread of dangerously contagious or infectious disease, which has not been proven, the department may, pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of the section, isolate or quarantine persons whose refusal to undergo observation and monitoring results in uncertainty regarding whether he or she has been exposed to or is infected with a dangerously contagious or infectious disease or otherwise poses a danger to the public's health. An individual may refuse to undergo observation and monitoring. An individual shall be given written notice, again, that shall include notice of the following: 1, that the individual may refuse to undergo observation and monitoring; 2, that if the individual consents to observation and monitoring, the results of that observation and monitoring may subject the person to individual or isolation or quarantine pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of the section; 3, that if the individual refuses to undergo observation and monitoring, that refusal results in uncertainty regarding whether he or she has been exposed to or is infected with a dangerous, contagious, or infectious disease or otherwise poses a danger to the public's health, the individual may be subject to isolation or quarantine pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of the section; and 4, that if the individual refuses to undergo observation and monitoring, becomes subject to isolation or quarantine as provided in the subsection F, he or she shall have the right to counsel pursuant to the provisions of subsection C of this section. G. To prevent the spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease among humans, the department may examine, test, disinfect. This is very important. This is a very important part. Pay attention. To prevent the spread of a dangerously contagious or infectious disease among humans. By the way, I did mention this to the woman I talked to who was contact tracer at the Department of Public Health in McDonough County, and she laughed at me. And so obviously, apparently, they have not read this act. The department may examine, test, disinfect, seize, or destroy animals or other related property believed to be sources of infection. That's why you're seeing, well, you're probably not seeing, because they're tearing down people's homes if they suspect them to be contaminated, and they're seizing vehicles. So when it says other related property, that's anything that could have been contaminated, which includes basically everything on Earth. I'm pretty sure. That's how far this has gone. An owner of such animal or other related property shall be given written notice regarding such examination, testing, disinfection, seizure. Which the disinfectants, you guys, are harmful to your health. They're a bunch of freaking chemicals, and your body is going to create exosomes, which are basically the chromosome 8, which may make you more likely to test positive with these PCR tests, which are not tests. Seizure or destruction. Written notice regarding such examination, testing, disinfection, seizure, or destruction. When the department determines that any animal or related property, which would be your house and cars, is infected with or has been exposed to, I hope you don't have a Mercedes or Lexus, a dangerously contagious or infectious disease, it may agree with the owner upon the value of the animal or of any related property that it may be found necessary to destroy. That sounds really interesting.
That sounds really creepy.
That sounds like if you're in the club, the George Carlin Club, the Kabbalistic, JEWISH Club, the United Nations Club, if you're in that club, then if you want to get rid of a property, they can pay you for getting rid of whatever property you don't even want. I think my that rental down on Fifth Avenue is contaminated. Can you tear it down and can we find a value of it so you can compensate me for it? Thanks there, Pritzker. And in case such an agreement cannot be made, the animal or related property shall be appraised by 3 competent and disinterested appraisers, I'm sure. One to be selected by the department. I'm not even kidding you. I told you.
Disinterested, yeah.
One to be selected by the department, surely a disinterested party. One by the claimant, and one by the 2 appraisers thus selected. Okay.
Whoever wrote this has got a diabolical mind, is all I can say.
They do. They are very diabolical. We know that. The appraisers shall subscribe to an oath made in writing to fairly value the animals or related property in accordance with the requirements of this act. And if you know the Talmud and Judaism, you know how much weight an oath means to them. The oath, together with the valuation, you need to go look it up yourself. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not even going to say it. The oath, together with the valuation fixed by the appraiser, shall be filed with the department and preserved by it. Upon the appraisal being made, the owner or the department shall immediately destroy the animals by humane euthanasia, as that term is defined in Section 2.09 of the Human Care for Animals Act. Dogs and cats, however, shall be euthanized pursuant to the provisions of the Humane Euthanasia in Animal Shelters Act. The owner of the department shall additionally dispose of the carcasses and disinfect, change, or destroy the premises occupied by the animals in accordance with rules prescribed by the department governing such destruction and disinfection. So anywhere your animal has been, in your car or your house. So all those things are the other related properties.
What if my animal's been running in the field? If I'm in the rural and my animal's been, are they going to destroy everything in sight? I mean,
I'm thinking they burn down lots of things. Look at the West Coast. Look at the whole western United States. The department shall cause the animals or related property to be destroyed and disposed of in the same manner, and thereupon the owner shall forfeit all right to receive. Okay. Upon his or her failure so to do or to cooperate with the department. I think that's a typo. The department shall cause the animals or related property to be destroyed and disposed of in the same manner, and thereupon the owner shall forfeit all right to receive any compensation for the destruction of the animals or related property. Sorry for your house and your cars and your pets. You mean to read that again? Upon his or her failure so to do or to cooperate with the department.
Oh, what's that mean? Cooperate? It's kind of vague term there.
No, if you cooperate, you have to agree to get your property destroyed.
Oh, okay.
If you cooperate them to destroy your property and get compensated for it, which I can see where if there were properties you had like that aren't worth anything anymore, then you could be cooperative and you will get compensated. However, if it's your residence and you're living in your residence or you're driving your car and you're like, no, you can't take my house, you can't drive my Lexus home and pretend like you're taking it to a junkyard, the department shall cause the animals and related property to be destroyed and disposed of in the same manner, and thereupon the owner shall forfeit all right to receive any compensation for the destruction of the animals or related property. Got it?
I think
you have to agree for them to. If
you're rich and can afford it, it sounds like you're going to get paid, and if you're not, you might just be.
Well, it depends. Like if you're in your mansion, then you might not want to forfeit that one. But I mean, I'm thinking those people are kind of connected. So, all final administrative decisions of the department hereunder shall be subject to judicial review pursuant to the provisions of the Administrative Review Law and all amendments and modifications thereof and the rules adopted pursuant thereto. The term administrative decision is defined as in Section 3-101 of the Code of Civil Procedure. B. To prevent the spread of dangerously contagious or infectious disease, the department, local boards of health, and local public health authorities shall have emergency access to medical or health information of records or data upon the condition that the department, local boards of health, and local public health authorities shall protect the privacy and confidentiality of any medical or health information or records or data obtained pursuant to this section in accordance with federal and state law. Additionally, any such medical or health information or records or data shall be exempt from inspection and copying under the Freedom of Information Act. Other than adhering for the purposes of this act, any information records, reports, statements, notes, memoranda, or other data in the possession of the department, local boards of health, or local public health authorities shall not be admissible as evidence, nor discoverable in any action or any kind in any court or before any tribunal, board, agency, or person. This access to or disclosure of any of this information or data by the department, a local board of health, or local public health authority shall not waive or have any effect upon its non-discoverability or non-admissibility. Any person, facility, institution, or agency that provides emergency access to health information and data under this subsection shall have immunity from any civil or criminal liability or any other type of liability that might otherwise result by reason of these actions, except in the event of willful and wanton misconduct. The privileged quality of communication between any professional person or any facility shall not constitute grounds for failure to provide emergency access. Nothing in this subsection shall prohibit the sharing of information as authorized in subsection 2.1 of this Act, the disclosure of any of this information, records, reports, statements, notes, memoranda, or other data obtained in any activity under this Act, except that necessary for the purposes of this Act is unlawful, and any class convicted of violating the provision is but guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. Okay, so basically, if you have any medical privacy, which you don't, because most of you signed the HIPAA privacy policy, I've never consented to this. The only time I consented was I did not consent, and I wrote that I did not give consent, that I was being forced to by my practitioner, was when my daughter it was actually her medical records when she needed stitches in her knee, and he wouldn't treat her if I didn't sign it, which he's not supposed to do that. But in the HIPAA, HIPAA, I believe.
PPA,
I think it's AA.
It doesn't.
Basically, when you're signing this, it says, I have read a copy. When you go to the doctor, ask for a copy. Tell them you want to read a copy. When you read a copy, you will not consent to the privacy policy. What it does, and the reason why they give you a couple lines of people to consent your privacy to, is that it used to read that you're it allows access for the national intelligence, CIA, DIA, whatever, into your medical records. That's what you were signing. It's not privacy policy for you. It's a privacy policy for the establishment. So it releases information for workman's comp, to lawyers, to FEMA, to Homeland Security, in the event of an emergency, to when you sign this. This is what you're doing. You're giving consent to give up your medical privacy. However, this act just overrides the whole shebang, so even if you don't sign it, you're still screwed. That's what I'm reading. 1A. The department, in order to prevent and control disease, injury, or disability among citizens of the state of Illinois, may develop and implement, in consultation with local public health authorities, a statewide system for syndromatic data collection through the access to interoperable networks, information exchanges, and databases. The department may also develop a system for the reporting of comprehensive integrated data to identify and address unusual occurrences of disease symptoms and other medical complexes affecting the public's health. B, the department may enter the contracts or agreements with individual corporations, hospitals, universities, not-for-profit corporations, governmental entities, or other organizations whereby those individuals or entities agree to provide assistance in the compilation of the syndromatic data collection and reporting system. C, the department shall not release any syndromic data or information obtained pursuant to this subsection to any individuals or entities for purposes other than the protection for the public health. All access, that would be fine if it was anonymous, but it's not anonymous. All access to data by the department, reports made to the department, the identity of, and furthermore, the McDonough County Public Health Department hasn't collected vital statistics since 2007. Where are those statistics? I can't even compare vital statistics from last year, say, to compare notes about the vital statistics of this year, percentages of flu and things like that, of suicides these COVID policies are causing.
Well, let me have an aside here. I'm going to bring up something I can't remember the name of the high school, but it was one of the early football games. They're actually having football in some high schools. The game was called off at halftime. One of the supervisors of the school said the students in a certain section will wear masks or the game will not continue. Well, what kind of insanity is this? I mean, Okay, the COVID is only going to operate in the second half. Apparently, in the first half, everybody put the mask on. It's coming. I mean, this is just mind-boggling. Some of the